hello friends, and welcome back. My name is Sergio, and I'm the handler for Mayday's Delta Green campaign, Doomed to Repeat. With me again is L'Uomo Nero himself, Black Project Gaming's Vince. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, good to see you again, and of course, good to be here. Glad to have you all tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, please consider liking and subscribing to us on whatever platform you happen to enjoy us on. Reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify helps boost our visibility and helps us grow. And if you want to help us out further, there is always our Patreon, where you can find extended versions of these episodes and even more Patreon exclusives.
The candles are lit. The ceremonial dagger has been retrieved, and the human sacrifice is thoroughly strapped down. Time to say your prayers and meet the Dark Man, baby, because you have found the Dead Drop. Vince, it's that special time of the year when even the terminally online begin to notice that the leaves are changing, the temperature is dropping, the pumpkin spice is flowing, and folks are actually looking forward to being frightened.
That is right. It is October, and what a perfect season to run Delta Green. In this monthly edition of the show, we will be speaking with Kevin Ham about the upcoming October Shotgun Scenario Contest. We will try to design a shotgun scenario of our own, and we'll have a scenario discussion about the perfect Halloween one-shot, Music from a Darkened Room.
As always, those of you who are tuning in, if you have questions or comments, if you want to discuss a session of yours from Music from a Darkened Room or any other game, please let us know. And if you want us to discuss a certain topic, reach out.
So, Serge, kind of riding on the back of your interview with the amazing Night at the Opera folks, Will, Melon Bread, Kevin, Chief McLean, all those guys. Turns out you did another interview with Kevin to discuss this year's Shotgun Scenario Contest. For those of you who may not be aware, one of the longest running contests in the Delta Green community, and probably one of the more popular ones, has been the annual Shotgun Scenario Contest, in which even the illustrious Caleb Stokes, author of God's Teeth and one of the role-playing public radio GMs, has written, submitted, and won for his shotgun scenarios. So absolutely a great contest, so much fun. What kind of stuff did you learn, man, getting to sit down and talk with Kevin about this?
Well, I learned that the contest is kind of settled into a very specific style. It's a 1,500 word or less contest. It begins October 31st, and the last submission can get in by December 31st. So you better believe at the end of December, or maybe in the new year, we'll talk about the winning entries.
Yes.
But yeah, I sat down with Kevin. I just asked him some basic questions about the contest and for new folks what they can expect.
It's a lot simpler than you'd think. It's a Delta Green scenario contest, and the idea is that you write a very small scenario, so very condensed, very lean. There's a lot of apocryphal ideas of where the term shotgun scenario came from, but I always think of it as like something you can grab off the shelf in an emergency very quickly, pick it up and run it. So it's a 1,500 word or less scenario. So there's really no fluff. There's not a lot of room for like complicated lore. It's a very simple here are some cultists, or here is a interesting thing to chew on. Let the agents go deal with it. Veterans taking on a threat, you can create pre-gens and it still works. It doesn't count against you. So it opens it up a little bit there. But generally the 1,500 word thing has been there for most of the contest life. It goes back pretty far.
So an interesting thing about Kevin is that he has both submitted to the contest and now he is running it. He's taken it over from the person that ran it before. So I asked him, what is the typical judging process, who decides it, and how do they come up with the decision?
Yeah, I just picked my favorite. No, I'm just kidding. There's actually two kind of parallel tracks there. So one is that anybody and their mother can vote on their favorite scenario, and that's just a popularity vote. We call that the People's Choice vote, People's Choice Award. It's just what do people like? They might like it because it's got a cool name, or it's maybe their friend wrote it, their favorite member of an old podcast wrote it, whatever. That's the People's Choice, and it's pretty much a free for all. And that's kind of how it used to be. And then everybody who submits a scenario gets to cast a vote, and that's a ranked choice voting. So that basically means if you're willing to put in the work to create a scenario, you get a vote because you're qualified in the sense that you wrote something, so you can decide what is good. And obviously we use ranked choice because otherwise everyone would just vote for themselves and nothing would matter. So really, it's like, is there an agreement on second choice? That's what wins the contest.
Now, during this interview, while you were talking with him, did he happen to mention, what they specifically look for in a winning entry? Like, what are some of the factors that really push it over the top for them?
I don't know what's going to do well. It's always a surprise. But I think, like, personally, a good entry is something that I can quickly read through and run. So, well formatted in terms of, like, character names are bolded or interesting things are bolded, or if there's an important clue, it's called out. So that, I get that. Picture the scenario. You show up to your Dungeons and Dragons night, and the DM didn't show up, or he's running, or he can't make it. And you're like, hey guys, you've always wanted to play Delta Green, right? Let's do something. Now you're on the spot. You're like, crap, I don't want to run some complex thing. So you basically you pull one of these off the shelf. You know what? I've always loved, last year's contest winner or whatever. It's always a favorite. You grab it. You know it because you read it before, but like you don't remember it, so you quickly able to skim it. And, hey, let's all take 5 minutes and make your head check your pre-gens out real quick, and then you're able to just start running it. So it's got to be runnable. And in shotgun scenario contests, they got to be a little zany, not like over the top, but just in terms of like, this is not a campaign you're going to invest months in where you need your character to survive and slowly uncover the mythos. This is like, a big huge fight in the downtown, in Central Park, or trying to stop a huge monster, or this is a running shootout on a subway train. Like, this is like really frenetic, action packed, like, so the shotgun scenario has to give me those set pieces, those things I can do.
So, we here at the Dead Drop, we want to help those new handlers, those folks who are new to Delta Green, and so I had to ask them, for anybody that is new to writing a shotgun scenario, what is some advice that Kevin has for them to write a solid first one?
Yeah, the best thing is, our friend Will always calls it the attitude of the knife. So, like, write your idea down. Don't worry about word count. Write your idea down. And then just see how long it is, and then just start cutting. Because if you write 10 sentences, I guarantee you can say it better in 5. And maybe even in 3. If you want to show, like, if you're setting your scenario in a deli in New York City, and you want that, like, corner deli flavor, you could write 3 NPCs. That's a lot of work. Or write one really good one. Like talking about the guy who's like leaning up outside, or the guy who's leaning on the counter inside talking to the manager, or talking to the owner, and he's talking about whatever. The owner's like, get out of here, you lazy bum. Like, that is evocative, and he do that in a lot less words than explaining that there's 3 people who own the place and they have 2 cats, like that. So like, write and then just start cutting, and keep cutting until you're lean. If you get less than 1,500, write a little more and then cut again. So just cut, like, don't be afraid to cut things. And again, you're not writing your magnum opus. If you get to like 5,000 words, you're writing a whole scenario, do it somewhere else. You're writing a 1,500 word scenario that's very tight and focused. So keep it, keep your knife sharp and use it often.
Now, did Kevin have any specific places he recommended folks go to for inspiration? I know way back there used to be the Fairfield Project, and they're even in the process of rebuilding the Wiki for Delta Green.
Yeah. Fortunately, Kevin had a bunch of good suggestions for where to get inspiration.
If you're interested in working on your own, there's the Wiki, which I'm sure you guys will link, which has them all. If you Google Delta Green Shotgun Scenario Contest, you'll find them. Scroll through the last couple of years' winners, take a look. Scroll through the ones that didn't win, because maybe you have a different tone. People will take a news story like the F-35 that went missing, and they'll just post the article. And they'll be like, Delta Green, better send a team in there. Like, and they'll just like no effort post it as if it's like the coolest scenario ever. It's like, guys, you got to put a little effort into it. But like, that's a start, right? Take that F-35 missing, and be like, okay, what if this thing didn't crash, but it like went somewhere else, or did something? What if it did something interesting that the players had to investigate? And now you start to have something. So start with, like, again, troll your local news, troll your interesting stories of last year. One of the quotes from Melon Bread was always like find your favorite atrocity, right, and then figure out how to set a scenario adjacent to it.
They happen to mention what the rewards are this year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously fame and fortune will follow you if you win. I actually throw a couple of drive-through RPG gift cards at folks. Every now and then, Arc Dream will give a couple. If there's something out, they've given out signed Need to Knows before. They've given out a couple download codes for recent books before. So every now and then, I beat up Arc Dream to give you free rewards. But I mean, like, I'm running this like for fun, again, I'm not a huge operation and that has all these resources. So it gives they usually give the winner like $20 and the second place $10, and it's like, look, you're writing this because you want to write a scenario and like you've got it in your head, and that's what it's all about.
Serge, once again, amazing interview, man. Great work as always. Always great hearing from Kevin and those guys. But I'll tell you what, just listening to that definitely motivates me to kind of dig in and want to come up with my own scenario. So why don't we put our heads together, see what we can come up with?
I'm ready too. Let's do it.
Now, taking inspiration from this month's Shotgun Scenario Contest, we thought it'd be a fun exercise to see if we here at the Dead Drop could come up with a scenario seed of our own.
Now, as a warning to everyone, there are many, many years worth of shotgun scenarios that have already been written. So if our final idea ends up sounding a little bit like your scenario or a scenario you've read, please don't think too much into it. There are only so many mythos, entities, and ideas. Recycling ideas is kind of a part of the community, so we're just doing this for entertainment purposes. We assure you we aren't trying to steal ideas or pawn them off as our own.
And we should also point out that there are two great resources, at least in our opinion, for coming up with a scenario. Me personally, especially when dealing with my players' backstories, I love to roll on that table that's provided in the briefing documents, which are pay what you want on Drive-Thru RPG, and kind of going off of that and using that to build a spine of a scenario.
There's also the Handler's Guide, which has a whole section on how to build an investigation, so check that out. We'll make sure to put the page numbers in the video. For the purposes of our exercise, we're going to try and keep a few things in mind from the Handler's Guide and their suggestions. One of the things they suggest is there needs to be a consistent level of uncertainty or a lack of control, a certain level of risk, and it needs to be scary. I think that's an important part of any good Delta Green campaign, is the agents should be on the back foot, and they should feel like at any moment they could be exposed.
Absolutely.
Most operations begin in media res as well. The agents have been brought in to investigate further or have been brought in to put together the clues. If this were a campaign, this might be part of an ongoing series of investigations that are linked, but we're going to keep it simple for now.
So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and start rolling on this incursion table here in the briefing documents. It's actually on page 7 if you already have a copy.
Okay.
So I'm going to read off the prompts, and then our boy Serge is going to do the rolling. So let's see what we come up with.
I got the dice.
Hell yeah. So with beginning with environment, we roll a D4. So
okay, D4. I was expecting D100s, so let me grab a D4 real quick.
Yep. Yeah,
Here we go.
With this one, use D4s, D6s, D8s, D10s, and 12s. Kind of goes through the
I'm
game.
going to roll a D4 for our environment. I have a 2.
All right, so that's suburban or ex-urban.
Okay, suburban or ex-urban. Do you know what ex-urban means?
The ex-urban, I believe, is like on the outskirts of a city or just outside of it. A region or settlement that lies outside a city and usually well beyond its suburbs, and that is often inhabited chiefly by well-to-do families.
Got it. So it's kind of on the perimeter of a big city. Got it.
Yep.
Next, we have our vector.
Our vector, yep, and that'll be a D6.
Okay, I've got my D6 here. Rolling it. Ooh, that is a 6.
A bystander exposed accidentally.
Bystander exposed accidentally.
All right, now we decide on what Delta Green's cover investigation is.
Okay.
That'll be a D8.
D8. I have my D8. Let me roll. 2.
2?
2.
Terrorism. That's always a good one.
Terrorism. Amazing. This is going to be very interesting to come up with.
Yes.
Terrorism.
And last but not least, the actual nature of the incursion. So that'll be a D12.
Okay. Where's my D12? There it is. A 6.
6. So, an unnatural entity or phenomenon taking physical form through human infestation.
Taking physical form through human infestation.
Which kind of fits nicely with the bystander exposed accidentally.
Yeah, it does. Clearly we have a patient 0 in that bystander exposed accidentally, right?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, so I'm recording my screen right now so that the listeners and viewers, most of the viewers, can see what we have here.
All right, so immediately the first thing that comes to mind, right? So we've got the bystander exposed accidentally to a unnatural entity that physically manifests through infestation with a terrorism cover. Like having a terrorism cover is like the best thing you could possibly do. So the first thing that comes to mind is a joint terrorism task force investigation involving a biological agent or some kind of disease or chemical exposure, something. So that warrants federal law enforcement involvement.
Right. Or, yeah, so it's almost like you could decide whether the terrorism is something that Delta Green is making up as a cover, or whether there is, in fact, some kind of public terrorism. Or at least it
Absolutely.
seems like that on the face of it.
Yeah.
And it's taking place suburban or ex-urban background, so that's interesting. I mean, typically when you think of terrorism acts or acts of terrorism, they're in a big city. New York comes to mind, things like that. To have it be in a suburban place is interesting. It
Yeah.
almost makes me think if maybe I almost wonder if the bystander that has been exposed, the patient zero, if they maybe returned home from work, or if they are in a unique place like a skating rink, in a suburban, like a place that you would find in suburbia, like a skating rink or a public park or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, and even that, or like they work in a city, they work in a lab, um, they're exposed to something during their day to day work in the city, and then they commute back to that suburban, exurban environment and bring it home to the neighborhood, to the family, and it spreads from there.
Now, I think a virus is too easy.
Totally.
How do we put it? How do we twist it on its head? When you think of an unnatural virus, a mythos-related virus, is it a virus of the mind? Is it a virus of alien origin, in that it has some other kind of effect besides just people being sick or appearing sickly?
Now, quick question: what are the ones that project their consciousness through time? That's not the MIGO. That's
No, those are the great race of Yith.
the Great Race of Yith. Yep. Okay. So one of the first things I thought of, especially with your agent does not remember some of what happened, and then like the missing time, the gaps in memory, is potentially something involving the Great Race of Yith, whether it's a projected consciousness type thing. But other than that, like absolutely, we could probably do some sort of alien parasite or extraterrestrial / unnatural parasite that takes control of the human for periods of time, and in which the individual would potentially lose consciousness. And that could be a potential avenue for the agents themselves to become infected.
Yeah. I am just going to spitball here because I like, kind of trying some more wacky off the wall things, especially when it's like just kind of like a visual or a intrusive thought, as Melon Bread likes to put, of like something that feels creepy. And I had this idea the other day of what if you listened to a song all the way to the end and it killed you? I don't know
Oh
why
shit!
I had that thought. I don't know how we could interpret that. But what about a situation where he brought home a song, or he brought home
Yeah,
something that is difficult to trace? It's not just like an alien inside his body. It's almost like a mimetic thing.
yeah, hell yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So it's a series of tones that almost like an unnatural ritual in itself. Certain actions, words, you know, linked together are the equivalent of a scientific formula.
Yeah,
I
I,
dig that.
I like the way what you've just added to it, which is that it could be like a part of a ritual, or maybe it's an incomplete ritual, and because it's incorrect or incomplete, it's having an unnatural effect on the person that is messing with it.
Yeah, and one entity that doesn't that I haven't seen explored a lot of because they're just so nebulous and they're so tough to kind of figure out are the Loiger.
Yeah,
And these are entities that latch themselves on, and they cause depression and cause these this overwhelming negative cascade of emotions, almost like a cancer. Maybe that's a vector through which they infect.
so is he studying a Loiger song? Is he studying a Loiger language?
A
Is it?
Loiger crystal. A Loiger
Hmm.
crystal. Yeah.
and the crystal like hums at a certain frequency or something.
Yeah, and maybe like through some of the experimentation that they're doing on this crystal, because I believe in the Handler's Guide they say the Loiger manifest in or around these crystals. They're hitting it with lasers, they're doing something, and it generates this specific harmonic frequency that becomes essentially like an earworm.
What immediately comes to mind, the image that comes to my mind, is that this man is studying this crystal and either awakens a Loiger or causes some kind of depression, kind of a ripple effect to happen. And I imagine him going to a Little League baseball game to watch his child, and I just have this image of the agents pulling up to this baseball game, and everyone on the field is crying and maybe attacking each other. I just have this like image of chaos on like a Little League baseball field.
I love that.
As we are talking about this, so maybe we can pick that as our suburban or ex-urban background, is that it's like a Little League baseball event. Maybe there's a dead body on site. Maybe as he was, like, I imagine him walking up the diamond as the game's in the middle, and a referee is like, hey, you need to get out of here, and he just blows the guy away.
Oh, yeah.
I think we need to kind of zero in on this crystal and its effects on the guy. How can it spread if it's some kind of mimetic thing? I would like to take it back to, like, the song. Like, maybe it's, maybe if... What I originally had in my head for the song is that if you hear it to the very end, it kills you. But if you can stop the song, you're safe. I don't know if that still applies in this situation, but it would be interesting if we could... I always like a good mechanic in a scenario, right? Like, whether it be with the monster or whether it be something unnatural, if we can come up with a fun mechanic that involves this musical vibration meme type idea that we're playing with.
Yeah, I like that, and I mean, to your point, like, you had a great mechanic that looks could kill one shot that you ran with that one entity, which was really fun.
Well, what's fun is that Gatanathoa is a very real entity that has always been his thing. If you look at him, you turn to stone. So I thought a modern version is you just get the little miniature version of him. So yeah, coming up with something that is along those lines that is easy to understand, but. Again, something as simple as if you listen to the song all the way to the end, you die. That kind of thing.
So I'm thinking the song itself is the vector for the infection, right? So it's knowing the song and becoming obsessed with the song is what lures, is what leads to that connection with the Loiger, because it is that harmonic frequency that crystal operates on, or what have you. Maybe it's a matter of if you complete it, if you say it enough or sing it enough. I mean, first it has almost like that yellow sign type taxonomy where it needs to be spread. You need to spread it. You need to make everybody listen to it. But then if you say it enough or you sing it to yourself enough, it opens your mind up to the point where the Loiger can take control completely. So it is death in a sense. It's more about being completely taken over by this thing.
So then does that look like, not only is our patient zero singing the song, but maybe as it spreads, others are singing the song. So you have this weird situation where you're trying to interview somebody and they just can't stop singing the song over and over again.
Exactly.
And then does that spread to the agents?
That's I think the risk. That's where a lot of the tension and terror will come from, is that how do they prevent themselves from becoming overwhelmed by this? And honestly, like, maybe the patient zero isn't holding these hostages and doing this because he is completely surrendered. Maybe he's doing it because he knows his family is now infected and he's trying to stop the song from continuing with them.
Interesting. Yeah, he doesn't want people to come close. He doesn't want people to hear him, so he would be in a muffled place, like maybe he's got the windows and everything shut in the hot dog stand or wherever he is.
Yeah.
So, if it was a case of the agents just hear the song and then have to make a roll, it might happen too quickly, too easily. I wonder if it's like, does the song have to be sung at a certain volume? Does it have to be at a certain pitch? Does it have to be
maybe there's like a willpower cost involved, and like every time you hear it or say it or something, it diminishes your willpower more and more and more, to the point where once you hit a certain threshold, like a certain percentage of your willpower, you surrender to it completely.
Yeah, maybe you have to make either a power roll or a sanity roll, and if you fail that, you've been bitten by the bug.
Yep, by the earworm. Yeah,
By the earworm. Yeah, that might be a good title for
earworm.
the thing, earworm.
There you go.
I'm gonna write that down right now. Could you? Maybe the scenario suggests the handler pick a song that is easy to sing along, maybe an old 50s doo-wop song or something that has like a slightly weird, connotation or tone to it,
Oh yeah.
but just like a good phrase, and maybe we can come up with one.
I don't know, anything by Tiny Tim or Roy
Yeah.
Orbison.
Yeah,
Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
Those are
fuck.
easy suggestions for sure. So we have our point of contact. Do we want to call them man or woman? Do you have a name in mind?
Oh God.
Karen?
Kevin.
Kevin.
Well, no, we just interviewed Kevin Ham. Sorry, Kevin. Let me pull up a random name
Kevina.
generator. What? Yeah, right. Fuck. Oh God.
Yeah, pull up a name generator that we can
Yeah,
use.
like pull up name generator.
Regular American person names.
All right, using my handy dandy name generator, we got Tessa Collins.
So Tessa Collins calls in. She's the point of contact, and she says what? That there was a shooting?
Yeah, she calls in that there's been a shooting at the today's Little League game, and the crazy scientist has taken his family hostage in the fucking snack stand.
I think she would just basically know him as a guy, and I think part of the investigation could be learning who he is and his connections and stuff. So,
Yep.
So the crazy guy has shot an ump and taken his family hostage in the hot dog stand.
His name is Wyatt Hale. Wyatt Hale.
The guy's name?
Yeah.
Well, it's some kind of crystal that they were studying that they thought had some kind of special frequency. Maybe there's a god of music, or a god of sound, or a god of thunder.
Yeah, god of music.
There's going to be a god of music, and it's probably the god of
Apollo. Yeah.
Okay.
But like, would Delta Green really be keyed in by somebody saying Apollo?
Right.
So we maybe come up with a special program name. So music back then, the lyre, I think, was his common attribute. So project Cobalt Lyre.
Cobalt Lyre. Okay.
The family would probably be, I would imagine, be dead ends, except for maybe, like you mentioned, the impending divorce or the marital counseling.
That's what I was going to say. The only clue that maybe would be useful from Karen is if you search public records, it's on record that they're in the process of divorce.
Yep, and which is a great avenue for the agents to cover this up. They just make it look like it's he broke bad because he was getting divorced and went crazy and took him hostage.
I'm trying to think of just like different kind of setups to kind of understand what's going on. Maybe there's a parent who tried to stop Hale and was like infected because he heard the song. So he's maybe in an ambulance isolated and he keeps repeating himself. But then it would be very creepy to have a bunch of children in unison singing a song over and over again. So I feel like
Would
children, witnesses who aren't infected, maybe there is some kind of authority on site, whether it be not the EPA, but
like local police.
Local police, yeah,
Yep.
police.
Like another local police chief type deal.
Maybe who deemed it a possible chemical spill or something like that, because of just the mass hysteria angle. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Who deemed it some kind of it's not a what's the right word?
Like an airborne agent or something like that.
Airborne agent,
like a gas leak. Yeah,
gas leak is what I was looking for. I guess really the main challenge is they're going to try to talk down Hale. So what does that look like? Are there any mechanics involved in talking him down?
Oh, probably I would probably just make it like a successive series of persuade and human rolls with maybe offering bonuses based on how good of a job the player is doing or any like novel approaches they take to it.
Now, if there's successes, great. If there's a series of failures, maybe things get more intense. I
Yep.
think the threat of him actually killing his wife should be very real, and once that happens, the players basically have no choice but to run in there and start blasting, right? So the hope is that they
Right.
don't hit the child. And then there's the cover up. You think that the agents could probably just pin this on terrorism?
No, either maybe not. If it was to be an overarching, more branching investigation, yeah, you could do it under the auspices of terrorism, like he was radicalized. But I think the cover up is, yeah, this guy his wife was leaving him. He just found out. He was just served papers. He went ape shit and took his family hostage.
They should
We're done.
also, the agents should also be forced to make a roll to hide the crystal if they take it
Yes,
with them.
and get it
As
or potentially even get it away, right? Because like if the cops walk off with it, that could be a whole other complication, right? Where they gotta get it back from the police.
what to do with the crystal is kind of the resolution and the cover up
Yeah.
there. Okay, this sounds like a lot of fun. I think I would want to play on that diamond field, on that baseball diamond. I would want to try to solve this problem. It makes a lawyer actually kind of interesting and understandable. It's the beginning of a lawyer story if you want to go down that path.
Not to get too punny, but it sounds like a home run, and I'd love to take a swing at it.
I'm so proud of you for finally contributing to the ridiculousness. Guys, I hope that you all got something out of this. If you have ideas for your shotgun scenario, let us know what you're working on. But as you can see, it's really just a matter of batting some ideas around between you and your friend and making some rolls and just sticking to them. It's really, like Kevin said in the interview, it's not meant to be too arduous. It's not meant to be something that you take a lot of time out. Just have some fun. It's really more of a writing exercise. And as you can see, with just a little bit of time, you can come up with a fun scenario to run for your players. So like we said earlier, it's October, it's fall, it's Halloween time, and if you are thinking about running a scenario for your friends in this time of the year, we cannot recommend enough the scenario Music from a Darkened Room. You can find it as both a standalone and in the Night at the Opera scenario collection. But we're going to talk about it today. As a warning, there are a lot of spoilers ahead for the scenario. If you are a player who doesn't want these scenarios spoiled for yourself, then you should make like Arthur Donnelly and have a sharp exit. So, let's get right into it. Vince, can you tee us up? What is Music from a Darkened Room all about?
All right. Yeah. So Music from a Darkened Room is a personal favorite of mine. Written by Dennis Detwiller, one of the first scenarios to come out for the new game. Definitely one of the earlier scenarios released. Long story short, it is a haunted house scenario. It takes place in the town of Meadowbrook, New Jersey, specifically at a house located at 1206 Spooner Avenue. That has a long and sordid history of mysterious and violent deaths surrounding it. What gets the player characters involved and their agents is that a Delta Green agent by the name of Arthur Donnelly, who was also with the FBI, recently committed suicide in the home. And the agents are called in to try to investigate the circumstances surrounding it. What really gets Delta Green's attention is the fact that Arthur Donnelly had kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, petitioned Delta Green to look into this residence before, but now ended up dead. Looked like his throat was cut, but of course no suicide weapon, no note, nothing was found. So as a result, the agents are called in to see if there is an unnatural presence, and if there is, do what they do best and take care of it.
It's really such a solid scenario. I've run it twice now. I enjoy it so much. One of the reasons I enjoy it, and we can get right into the pros of the scenario, is that it's a scenario that cannot be solved with guns. So often, you just pull out some guns and you start blasting at things and you hope that it kills whatever's coming at you. In this instance, it's not that easy. So it's a great challenge, especially for those trigger-happy agents.
As far as scenarios go, it is definitely, I feel, one of the more atmospheric ones. It's just it's really just dripping with that scary, haunted house type atmosphere. It's great for players that really enjoy haunted houses, and I feel like a lot of players who maybe don't necessarily understand the lore surrounding Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu or anything else, they may be looking for like a ghost oriented or haunted house type scenario, and this is a perfect entry point for players like that to really kind of expose them to this unnatural side of things that could manifest as something they're more familiar with, like ghosts and haunted houses.
Yeah, that's a good point. That although there is a mythos entity involved at the end, you don't necessarily have to know everything about the mythos to really get a kick out of this.
Right.
So maybe we transition to some of the challenges that we both found when we ran this. You had an interesting challenge in that you weren't able to complete the scenario in your first run, but eventually you did in your second run.
Right.
Something that I found was immediately obvious, which is that if your players are overly cautious, it might keep the scare factor to a minimum. The scenario could drag a little bit if they are overly cautious. You might want to tell players to really engage with the scenario. Don't be afraid to meet it head on. And also getting the players to come at night could prove kind of challenging. Another thing I found a little challenging was the manifestations that happen in the house. So whenever you go to the house, things happen both in the day and in the night that are creepy and weird. And what seems obvious is that at night, the more intense things should happen, and during the day, maybe the more subtle things should happen. The book also suggests that you try to track the willpower threshold for all of the agents, because different manifestations might happen for different willpower thresholds. I really had a hard time tracking that. Because you literally have to know what every player's willpower is at that moment. So I actually let that go. I ignored that whole willpower thing, and I just organized the manifestations from least intense to most intense, and just kind of one by one started dropping them as the players explored the house and kept coming back, etc.
I've also found that if players don't seek out Elizabeth Tucker, they're going to have a much harder time finding the bowl, the knife, and the book, all three of which are are essential to resolving the scenario completely.
Can you give a little bit of context who Elizabeth Tucker is and why they're searching for this bowl, knife, and book?
Yeah, so Elizabeth Tucker is a Delta Green friendly who, at the start of the scenario, was specifically called out by the case officer as being a local friendly that they could make contact with. She's an antiques dealer who was able to track down furniture that was sold from the Wheeler house at 1206 Spooner Avenue. Specifically, this end table that it actually contains this ritualistic bowl, knife, and this diary of Isabel Wheeler, who resided in the house and who, was played a role in the consecration of the ground to Nyarlathotep and the Dark Man. And you need those in order to be able to deconsecrate that ground. They also, I found, may go down a rabbit hole. There's this, obviously the name of the scenario is Music from a Darkened Room. There are some manifestations in which they can hear the piano play, and I found that could draw them down a rabbit hole, that by going after the piano and really obsessing about finding the piano versus this end table. Yeah.
In two scenarios that I ran, one of them the players split up enough that at least one team went to look for the antique table, so I was able to put the bowl, the knife, and the book in that. In another scenario, my players became very obsessed with the piano because they heard the music, they found the sheet music. So I suggest that if your players do go down a rabbit hole, it's okay to put the bowl, the knife, and the book in that piano. Maybe there's a secret hutch or a secret compartment, because what you don't want is your players to be frustrated where they just did all this searching and it comes up with nothing, and they're thinking, what the hell, we thought we looked down every avenue.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Put it in the piano. It's that easy.
Sometimes you just have to roll with the punches of what the players are throwing at you, right?
100%.
So there are some suggestions we have for this scenario. One of them that I would suggest is you might want to consider putting a time crunch on this session or on this scenario. The players will need to expend their willpower to stay up doing research. The reason I'm suggesting this is because the more they whittle down their willpower, especially when it's happening in the house, the stronger the house becomes. Every time they fail a sanity check in that house is eating up that willpower. So you want to consistently hit them with manifestations, even if it is the middle of the day. If they split up, if they go into a new space, I think there should be some kind of manifestation to trigger a sanity check so that house can feed. And the time crunch just forces them to be at their wits' end. That way the climax is even more intense, especially when the house attempts to take over somebody. If they've got low willpower, it's going to succeed, and then all hell is going to break loose.
I would also maybe have the real FBI show up after 72 hours. Give them a timetable to work on where, you've only got this finite window of time to operate with impunity. And after that, other people are going to start coming around asking questions. So it kind of forces them to jump in feet first and really keep that forward momentum going, which is, of course, going to carry them into the house eventually, sometimes more than once. And kind of removes that safety net where they feel like they have as much time as they want and they can proceed as carefully as they want. Puts a little bit of added strain and pressure on that.
And I've never had the FBI actually show up. I have put this time crunch both times where the FBI or the real FBI are coming in 72 hours or whatever if you don't solve this. It would be very interesting to add the wrinkle of now you've got 2 or 3 legitimate FBI agents snooping around. What I did always have is that at the end of the ritual, the cops are coming from the sounds of screaming coming in the house as people murder each other.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I think you should consider making Donnelly someone that is closely associated with one of the agents. I really like tying the agents into the backstory of the narrative. I did it with my playthrough with Mayday, where we didn't record this, unfortunately, but Agent Tuck was Arthur Donnelly's almost like protege, and I think that gave some weight to both his death and the investigation. So you might even want to consider Donnelly being a former case officer of the agents.
Emil Yarrow is probably one of the more fun NPCs I've enjoyed portraying because
he's a parapsychologist at a local college, right?
Yeah, and he's supposed to be full of shit, and so you can really play that up like this is a guy who thinks he knows what he's talking about, but really has no fucking clue what he's talking about. So like my advice would be maybe watch an episode or 2 of Ghost Hunters or something, or one of those other paranormal investigation shows. Really like adopt that parlance and some of the lexicon and incorporate that. If you haven't seen it, 28 Days Haunted on Netflix has some of the biggest heaping piles of bullshit on ever. Just watch that and get to the part with the God helmet and just use that. And your agents will immediately know Emil Yarrow is not someone to be relied upon for accurate information.
And if they don't pick up that he's bad, it's just going to get really crazy really fast. So he'll probably suggest that they separate in the house, and then you can do all kinds of fun things to them.
Yeah, that's his big advice, right? Go into the house at night, go in alone, which are like the exact opposite of what you need to do to survive this frickin' scenario.
Yeah, so play Yarrow with a straight face to see if you can trick the players.
Definitely.
A lot of this scenario is about seeing how you can trick the players into making mistakes or doing things, isolating themselves.
Trickery is a big part of it, yeah.
There is the very fun climactic end where the agents have collected all of the items and they have to create a human sacrifice. They have to kill somebody. They have to take a life to end the connection that the Dark Man, the Uomo Nero, has to this house. I would suggest, and I've seen this suggested in other places, that when the Dark Man appears, make it memorable. And one of the ways that you can is that you can start having the Dark Man, like the devil, in many mythology tales, start talking to the agents about their backstories, their motivations. Maybe he offers them something that they can't get, that they've been struggling to have. Maybe he offers to help them reconcile with somebody who was a Bond formerly. Play that up, because if you have a moment where you've got an agent actually considering it, the other agents are going to lose their mind, and suddenly it's going to be this crazy standoff. What do you think are some of the best scares that handlers should make sure to include for this scenario?
Oh man, there are so many. Read through them, find your favorites, and go with those. But like for me, there's a sequence where during the day they can be in the master bedroom and there's like a penny on the floor, and one of the agents kicks it, it rolls across the floor, but then it goes through the mirror, through to the other side, and even something so small as that creeped the living hell out of my players.
Yeah.
One of them drank this rancid coffee in the living room, not under their own power, puked up maggots. Isabel Wheeler's manifestations in the master bedroom, the monster on the floor, all fucking so creepy. So
many good moments. The Moonlight Sonata for sure is great. I like to end a scenario where, as they're walking up to the house, they can hear the music.
Yes.
Something I did that is not a manifestation, but through understanding the history of the house, it was very effective. We had a kind of technology specialist, and they put cameras all around the house to watch if anything weird happens. And when they collected that footage, I basically replayed for them what happened in, 1927 or whenever the house was consecrated, where they literally witness the Divatellos and Isabel Wheeler sacrifice another cat in the bowl with the knife, which just added to the clues, but was a fun one for the technology person to kind of lose their mind over.
That is cool as shit. That's a good idea. I like that.
I think this is a fabulous scenario. Anyone who has not run it should definitely try to run it for their group. If you guys end up running a memorable home game for Halloween, let us know how it went.
Yeah, and if you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you're not yet a patron, we're offering extended episodes with even more content, so sign up at patreon.com/MaydayRP, where any patron level, any at all, can get access to these exclusive episodes.
So you all know, we're going to take a short break in November for these monthly installment episodes, but we'll be releasing still the Impossible Landscapes walkthrough, and then we'll be back in December with more monthly episodes. In the meantime, I want everyone to stay safe. We'll see you next time.
See you, folks. Have a good one.